Everybody, it's Dr. Kathy. How are you? Yesterday we had a great time talking with Lawrence on Ask Dr. Kathy. I have to go over the points we made. They were so important. He brought up so many important nuggets. I love calling them nuggets because they're gold. And they're connected to not only our communication everyday life, but our sexual communication, our orgasms, right? I want to create our orgasms. Those of us that need to create orgasms, we need to get into the communication. We have to communicate with our partners. So let's go over some of the key points we made or he made yesterday so that we won't forget and we'll apply them to our further discussion on the orgasm. The first thing, both have to become masters in communication. I sort of like bucked with that. It was, whoa, we're not psychologists, we're not psychiatrists. How can we become professionals? How can we become masters? The point made was we need to attempt, we need to try. We need to be aware, first of all, that we need to become masters. We need to actually go for a course, if we could, in psychology on communication. I've been told that so many times, and I've deflected, I've actually deferred it. Why? Because I thought I'm fine. Learning and talking and reading and even watching other people. I watched a couple, and you could see that they'd been married for quite a few years, but they were not really communicating. Older guy, sort of, aloof and sort of short tempered. And you could see that she was the loving wife, dutiful wife, trying to be the responsible person and keep the relationship going, while he was more distant and more interested in other things than in her. And you could see that there was a disconnect there. Now, obviously, I don't know any details. I didn't talk to them. But it's something I think we can see, right, in our families, with our friends, at work. So communication is key. So I really do think it behooves us to go back further into our discussion from yesterday and take home some more important, a little bit more detailed points on communication, especially when it comes to our orgasm, which I want us to get under control or to create. Your partner needs to understand you, right? Your partner, our partners need to understand what we are trying to say. But we were not taught to communicate. We have to realize that when we're trying to communicate to our partner, where we come from, that's not how the partner was learned or taught how to communicate or even exposed in terms of communication. And where he or she came from in terms of communication, we don't actually understand. So, two strangers, right? We already know this. Two strangers are coming together from two different worlds. And here we are trying to communicate. If you're lucky and you hit it off, fine. But most of the time, it does involve work. So, we've got to remember to study it. There are so many books out there and so many sites that you can go to learn about communication. Please, please, please. If you need some references, let me know. Just send me a message. But the most important point here is you have to put in the effort to learn about communication. I have done some, but I am going to definitely do more because I think that there is a need, not only in my life, but in all our lives, to improve our communication. Part of that communication, obviously, is that as a woman and as a doctor, I'm used to chop, chop, chop. Let's go, let's do this. And I can't take that to my relationship because if I do, I'm going to chop, chop, chop off the relationship, which I don't want to do. The importance is in also in your life. Same thing. You go to work, you come home, you're tired, you neglect to communicate properly. We've got to correct that. And so the first take home point I really want to emphasize is we've got to become masters in communication. We have to learn to be gentle when it's time to be gentle. We have to learn to be considerate that the other person might not have the knowledge that we are probably full of, and that we've got to gently or patiently explain that our information is pretty valid or that our information is relevant, so that the person understands that we are taking the time to give that information to that person in a nice way. And again, that is going to be emphasized in the way that your partner will understand. Point number two, fears that stop us communicating. Like we mentioned yesterday, rejection. We don't want to hurt our partner. We don't want to offend our partner. We're busy, so we don't communicate. We just assume the person understands. We're proud. We think that the information we have is so regal, so royal that we don't even think the person should know about it. Or the person you assume knows about it and you don't think you need to explain it to the person. No, no, no. We have to be able to communicate and double check and make sure and even repeat after the person or after what we've said. You can repeat it again to your partner that, did you understand what I said? Do you want me to say it again? Want me to give a different example? And you can even have your partner say, hey, can you tell me what you learned from what I said or what you understood what I said? So you can ask him to or her to repeat it for you. So arrogance, you don't want to be arrogant. Sometimes people can't explain themselves. Some people don't have a great command of English, right? So they will avoid or have a fear of communicating. They might think it's not an important topic. They might think they have no knowledge about the fact that the person thinks it's important and it is not important to them. So sometimes they won't communicate for that reason. Lack of emotions, decreased emotions. If someone's not very emotional, someone is not very uh, empathic, they might not feel communicating is important. So we have to try and give them that information that it is important and that both of you, both of us have to communicate to get to the next level of the relationship, right? People are afraid to criticize. Again, upbringing. We know that upbringing can make us not communicate because if we were brought up in a family where they didn't communicate, we're going to not communicate. So we have to go above and beyond that experience to communicate in our own relationships so that we are better and happier and long lasting in terms of having a longer relationship. Child pain, child trauma. We talked about that. It causes scars. They heal, but they sort of change the brain, right? So a child has a trauma, a child has pain. They're not really able to process thoughts the way someone that didn't have pain processes thoughts. So we've got to be aware that when someone is having a horrible childhood or we are aware of someone growing up in a horrible childhood, that sometimes the way they process, the way they think is completely different. And even those that come from some healthy families can have that problem too. So you got to be aware that it's extra noted with someone that comes up in a family that has been traumatized. So we don't take it for granted that they think the same way. We've got to actually get them help. We already know about therapy, but sometimes they are helping themselves, medicating themselves with their so-called um, happy things that they do. But we don't want that. We want them to actually really deal with the issue, go back to the family members or whatever situation it is where they're not able to resolve that conflict within their life or that trauma. And I know we talked about it not sometimes being possible to heal from it because it's such a deep wound and such a big scar that sometimes the thought process is it's too late. But we've got to make it a try. We've got to give it a try. We've got to give each other the support that we can, and hopefully that will at least give some relief to the person in terms of communicating better and improving the communication if they want to. So therapy, we already know that therapy has that window period. If you've had childhood trauma, we don't want to wait for too late. So y'all, if you have therapy, you know anyone that has therapy that needs therapy, please encourage them to get therapy because at least it's a start in the right direction. You just want to get them started and you never know what happens, what they will learn from that. Do they know that they are having a communication problem? They probably do know because they have that pain, they have that hurt, and they have feelings within them that's uncomfortable. They can't explain it, but they can't manage it. Remember we talked about that? They cannot control their wild, sometimes out of the blue saying things that they shouldn't be saying to people that is inappropriate. So you really will see people that even might have PTSD that just come out and say things that are so mean to people that you can't explain it any other way except that there's things going on inside, again, unmet needs and unhealed pain that has been going on in their life. So you really do want to encourage them to resolve the unmet needs and the unhealed pain by not only getting therapy, but by going back to the source. We talked about that. And remember, we cannot fix it, women, right? We think we can fix a lot of this. We cannot fix it. I'm a fixer. I have to stop fixing things, but that's my job. I've got to fix things. I've got to help people. So it's very difficult for me. I've been doing it since I was 16. It's very difficult for me to not help. I'm always giving of myself. And that's the joy that I get from doing that. But communication, you have to find out whether the person wants to receive that information, whether the person actually wants to be helped, even medically. So that is something that I'll have an issue with, but it's something that you got to be at least gentle and give the person the benefit of the doubt that they have a decision and they have a right to say yes or no or refuse the help, which is their prerogative. There is a limit to effective communication. That means we are not going to keep on going on and on and on and on, hitting our head against a brick wall, trying to get this person to understand what we're saying. We can't. We can't keep on doing it because we're going to not only injure ourselves, but we're going to get nowhere. The person has to be ready for that information. The person has to be wanting to get that help from you or from anybody. So there is a time that you just zip up and forget it and say, you know what, I'm not giving any help here. I'm actually doing more harm by nagging, and just stop. The person has to be right. I like the word right because it's like, gotta be right. We gotta be soft and in that sweet spot before we can actually get through to help, not fix, to help the person see that the communication is the issue. Bad communication leads to either no communication and a disconnection because no effort's been made, or bad communication can lead to better communication when you do put an effort and then you connect and you do realize that you're getting somewhere. That's the game plan, right? We change our bad communication and make it better, but it takes two to tangle. If they don't want it for themselves, they will not want it for you or me. If they don't want to improve their communication for themselves, they're not going to want it for us in a relationship. So remember that. If they are not willing to do something about their issues, they're not going to do it for us because they're not even putting themselves first. Inability to communicate can lead to frustrations, anxiety, sickness, relationship problems, family problems, failures, recurrent failures in life. And that's how you know that there's something wrong. Innately, you know, okay, what's going on in my life? And you just know that you're not getting to where you should be getting to in life, your purpose, your path, right? We talked about that yesterday. You have to go back to the source. You got to confront your source, the person. Now, if the person's not alive, you can still speak to that person. Imagine the person, speak to that person, because that person is still somewhere. Energy never dies, right? So you want to speak to that energy and you want to be able to release the pain, release the sorrow, release the grief, release the bad memories that you've had so that you can move on. Remember, even if the person's passed away, you can still imagine the person, be in the room with the person, and communicate. And you'll get a lot of relief from that. You have to talk about how you were hurt, how you were maltreated, how it bothered you, why did it happen? Have an explanation, if the person's alive, that will satisfy you. Just ask all the questions that you can when you actually go back to the source. You want to do it because you want to give yourself love. You want to show that you care about yourself by addressing and confronting people that have hurt you and harmed you. Now, Again, like I said yesterday, got to be careful, make sure it's in a safe place, but don't carry it. You don't want to be walking around with this pain and this emotion that's not been resolved, because it just eats into you, and it actually probably can create physical ailments that you're not even aware of, like an ulcer, very common stress ulcers. Um, you've got to give yourself grace. You've got to give yourself love to be able to do this and to accept that these things have happened. But you have to speak to someone, to hold someone responsible for your pain, so that the person knows and you've got it again out of you. So it's released. So it's not within you eating you up. So you confront them to be able to learn to manage it better, to get peace for yourself. That's the main thing, peace. Otherwise, you build up anger and hate, which is so much easier to do, to keep that anger and hate, than to do the work of confronting somebody, right? To call somebody up or to go to someone and say, hey, I have to talk with you. This is what happened. I don't like what happened. I want to know why it happened. It's not easy. But until you do that, you're not going to be able to release that hate or that pain or that trauma. And you want to do that so that you can move on. Very important. This is across the board for so many things in life. You need to address what is hurting you. Even if it doesn't make sense to you, just do it so that you'll have that resolution at hand. You have to go into an uncomfortable place to deal with this, right? It's not comfortable. We don't hold ourselves accountable for the mistakes that we made when we were younger in life and that have impacted our lives. We have to accept that it is sometimes difficult to acknowledge that we actually intentionally did something either bad or wrong. But when we do and we look at it in the face, I think that's the starting of that journey of healing, getting back on that path. Very important to apologize to yourself, apologize to the person involved, so that again you're back on that track. It's like, isn't that crazy that communication can do that? Amazing that communication can do that. But I think that's the secret sauce that we've been missing, that we do not understand how important communication is. But I think this discussion yesterday really, really pointed out that you really do have to come back to self love, which I've talked about so many times. And you have to understand that self love means acknowledging and accepting that we have flaws, we've made mistakes, and actually apologizing for those mistakes to people that you've harmed and getting an apology, or if you can, an explanation from people that have harmed you growing up along the years. We always want to see ourselves as right? We want to see ourselves as perfect, that we really don't make mistakes, but we do. And we know we do, but we don't want to show the world our mistakes. But sometimes, especially when it causes pain and harm and shame, you want to make that effort and talk about it openly. The therapist, if you can't get to the person, or if you want to do it with the person, with the therapist, you can do that. Um, but we have to accept that we make mistakes, and you have to give yourself grace, and you have to allow yourself to sometimes fail and allow yourself to make that mistake, but not to make the same mistake over and over and over again, right? You don't want to keep on doing that. But we know some people don't want to get better. Instead, they just want to stay unhappy. They just made the mistake over and over again. So people like that, you've got to sort of avoid, right? You can have a conversation with them, but if they keep on, going back and doing the same old, you need someone that's going to elevate you, bring you out of that, right? You are what you attract. So if you are in a place or in a space where you're unhappy, you're stressed, you're having negative feelings and you're having negative emotions, that means you're attracting negative people. You're attracting negative energy. You're doing something within you that's keeping you negative, right? So you don't want to be negative. You want to be positive. So you've got to now address those issues, right? By getting to that source, and then you'll become more positive, right? And then more positive things will happen to you. Better things will start happening to you in life, and doors will open. I'm sure you all feel that, and you've all experienced this. The actual moving from negative to positive, when you're doing that, right? It's just all in the spirit, all in the sixth sense, all within, right? The subconscious. So you're going to have to acknowledge that When you are feeling better, you're on the right track. When you're feeling worse, you're not on the right track. Very difficult to acknowledge what has happened to you. And when you've made your wrong decisions, it's so easy to ignore it. So easy just to ignore it and say, you know what, I'm not going to think about it. Wrong. You have to confront how you feel and not suppress it. Otherwise, it will keep you from loving yourself. And you're basically lying to yourself, right? So when you're not acknowledging that you've made a mistake or you've lied or you've done something wrong, you're actually going to suffer inside. And I know we've been there before. Crying is therapeutic. That's what Lauren said. Crying is therapeutic. You need that in depth analysis, in depth awareness on your journey for peace. You need to go down that road, and it might involve crying for men and women, being able to reach out in pain to someone that's hurt you or traumatized you. It can make you cry, but you're going to need to do that, of course, in the privacy of your own space in your own room. But you really need to do that. And even if it's not in the privacy of your own space, you need to do that because it's something that will, again, release all that pent up bad energy that you've had in you. And we want, again, to love, live, laugh, and again, focus on getting back on your path. Material things are brief, they're deceptive, especially when you think that you made it, right? You've arrived. Life is sweet. So the material thing you might think is keeping you, thinking you're fine, thinking that you're great and that you've arrived. But it's really the question is if number one, you take away those things, whether you're going to still feel that way. But the truth is you'll know that things are still not right because people are either missing in your life that need to be in your life. People are doing things to you that shouldn't be doing things to you. So things are still happening negatively despite all those material things. So remember that self-love lasts forever. So that if you focus on self-love, those gifts, those material things can come to you in a different way, but you're going to be able to be a stronger person throughout life versus someone that has all these material things, and if it's taken from them, they're going to be miserable. Or worse, they have the material things and they die with those material things and they can't take it to the grave, right? So those material things, we all know you cannot take to your grave. So the question is, how happy are you while you're on this earth? What's your quality of life? How did you spend your life on this planet? Was it in God's line of work? Was it in what he actually, the God that we believe in, wanted you to actually do and achieve, right? So we all know about that light that needs to be shining out for people to see. Is it shining out for people to see, or is it under some bed, hidden, and we just don't see it? So you really want to be able to shine your light so that you know you're on the right purpose. You want to be your authentic self, right? That's the bottom line. To be your authentic self. Who are you? You've got to be the true person that you are. And how do you know? Again, it elevates you. Things that you do not hurt you. Things that you do don't make you suffer. Things that you do don't make you um, uh, cry in pain. But things that we go through can, right? So we're going to go through some decision making and some experiences that can make us cry and make us have pain. But remember, you're looking at it as a part of life, as an experience, and you're going to come out of it the better, depending on how you handle it, depending on how you communicate, depending on who you listen to, depending on your decisions. So very important to know, we're all going to have our ups and downs. We all have our paths. We all have our journeys. But it's how you handle or the decisions you make in those journeys that you have to now decide which way you're going to go. And then the ultimate outcome will be depending on what decision you make, based on hopefully coming from a good place, not from a dark place, making a bad decision if you're in a dark place versus making a good decision if you're in a good place. So your decisions have to be clear, and you're going to have to sort of come from a positive space instead of from a negative space so that you can continue being on a positive journey instead of being on a negative journey. All right, so you can't take a shortcut. There's no shortcut. Everyone wants to take a shortcut. Everyone wants it easy, but it is not going to be easy. And if you don't do the work, you will not get the results. And there's a window for all this to happen. Remember, we talked about that too? If we do not do it within a certain time limit, that chance is gone. And there are penalties. We know this, right? Karma. Things come back to us. So we've got to make sure that we are doing things with good intention. Even if we make a mistake, get up, we correct it. But you do not want to continue making that same mistake over and over again. And you learn from your mistakes, meaning you make a mistake, you go back and say, okay, what do I learn? What did I learn? What did I learn? I'm going to not do this again. And you don't do it again. At least you try not to. If you do it again, you make that same commitment to not do it again by learning and by maybe asking someone that might have better information regarding how we can handle that situation, right? Doesn't matter what it is. You have to go to someone that has better knowledge, someone that has, a higher understanding of that particular situation. You really should get tired of making bad decisions because the bad decisions have bad consequences. When you do the work, self love becomes a priority. You will not want to be around people that make you go back to that dark place. I love that. You know, chills go down my spine. When you do the work, self love becomes a priority. And you will not want to go back to people, or you will not want to be around people that make you go back to that dark place. So, note, people that make you feel like a dark cloud is over your head are people you want to avoid. People that are mean are in a lot of pain because nobody cares for them. So all those mean folks that we've met, no one's caring for them. They have no love. So they're in a lot of pain. So just take note of that. We don't have good role models. We just wing it. We've got to look for good role models. Self-love will guide you to the riches of life. And that is all that's going to be guaranteed to us as long as we follow the right path. People don't self-reflect and don't self-analyze. Instead, we run from it. We need to do more self-reflecting and self-analyzing. If we did something wrong, how can we correct it? What can we do next time if it happens to us? How can we improve our situation? And I'm saying across the board, not just sexually, but across the board in our life, in terms of communication and in terms of life in general. We need to surround ourselves with people that will elevate us out of the darkness. We need to be around people that have light. And I know it's hard to find sometimes, but you've got to diligently do your due diligence and go and look for people that actually have that information that we need. And right now, that's easy. We can do that online. So very, very easy place to start. And of course, you can have mentors and people that can advise you also. You should not be the smartest person in the room. We said that yesterday. You cannot be the smartest person, otherwise you're not going to learn. You shouldn't hang around people that agree with you and make you comfortable because they're not challenging you. You need people that are going to challenge you and improve you and be honest with you. Our circle becomes smaller as we get older because we're getting wiser. We're getting older and becoming wiser. So we are more choosy of who we hang around with. Everyone knows some things that are wrong with them because there are things that are always wrong with us. But whether they actually face up to it is the question. Because if you face up to it, you'll get back on your path. If you don't, you're going to stay off your path. Some people don't want to some people don't want to get back on the path. Some people just don't want to get back on the path. They're comfortable staying off their path and going in their own direction. So just remember that. Don't get pulled into someone that's not going into their own path. They want to just pull you off your path too. So beware. Some people will not be able to get back on the path. Some people will not be able to even see the path and they will just completely miss it. But some people will get back on the path. Never too late for you and your partner to work on communication. It's never too late. The question is, do both of you want to work on it? Right? And the answer is you have to learn how to communicate. As long as you are working on your communication and your partner's working on his communication, when you come together, the communication will work. But if one person is not working on the communication and you are working on your communication and you come together, you're going to be hitting heads, butting heads. You have to create a safe place where you are both comfortable when you do communicate. And he said that yesterday. He said, your femininity for women is your superpower. I found that amazing. Your femininity is your superpower. You're being feminine. You're being soft. You're being gentle. You're being kind. You're being understanding. You being just pouring love into the person, pouring caring into the person, pouring caring behaviors, caring attitudes, caring smiles, just by your touch, right? Your femininity is powerful to men, right? Now, I don't think we realize how strong that is, our power with men. We need to understand that if we are at that right sweet spot of communication in terms of being gentle, kind, they really will appreciate that. Same thing for us. We want them to be kind to us too in terms of communication. But I think I've always believed, as he said yesterday, that we really are the people that decide whether we can make or break a relationship. We've heard that so many times before. The women decide that. So we women have to take up that stance, and I believe we do a lot of the times, to support our families, support our men that need the support and want the support. If they don't want the support, you're not supposed to give them support. We talked about that. You are not supposed to give them any support unless they want it. Now, yeah, you can have the discussion, you can have attempt to have a discussion, but you can't keep on going in that direction if it's not working. So people that are in pretentious situations, right? So you're in a family, you're in a situation, relationship where you are walking on eggshells. You're not yourself. Until you do the right thing, the self love, and sit down and have a conversation with your partner and tell your partner what is on your mind, being truthful to yourself, you will never be happy. You will always walk around pretending. And that's the worst thing you can do to your soul because you're killing your soul. You have to do the work by ensuring that you have self love and that you in the relationship are giving your all, right? So you have to give your all to this communication skill that we're talking about. Both of you have got to want it. So if you're giving your all and he's giving his all or she's giving his all, you're both wanting it. And that is what you need. Both of you need to give your all. If he's not giving your all and it's not at least being reciprocated, you are not going to be able to be successful in communicating, which means that orgasm will be elusive. So remember, in order to get our orgasmic result from communicating, from having communication, from having a great relationship that we can communicate in, you're going to have the ability to communicate well with your partner. And it starts with you and me and you. Okay, guys? All right, that's all I wanted to say today. I really want to focus on communication because we're going to go to the orgasm, and the orgasm really needs us to be able to communicate with our partners about what we want and what we need. So please start today, communicate, let your partner know that you are in a loving way wanting to open that avenue, open that door to communicate better. It's never too late as long as both of you are willing to talk. All right, have a great night, guys. Bye.